Hang on, it's not there. There it is. Now we're live. Hey.
What is this strange world I have stumbled into?
Well, it's I don't know what it was. It's Strangeville, I guess. What's going on, Mr. Jeremy Maddux?
Hey, long time no speak. Is that Nixon and Hogan in the middle panel?
It sure is. Hang on just a second. I'm going to share this out to the world here, and maybe we'll have some people come and hang out with us and watch us talk and draw. Maybe we won't. Not really concerned about it one way or the other, but I'm going to put this out on Twitter real quick, and then we'll get started. Not on Facebook because I'm not there. You're not either, are you?
No, hell no, never again.
Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. Yeah, you said never again. I think I feel the same way. Hang on, let me put this out here. Shit, comic book. You still get on your Twitter?
I quit that too.
Do you remember what your handle was?
Based Howard Beale, the guy from Network.
I love that name.
I wonder if I should change my YouTube handle to that.
I suggested that a while ago. Is it all one word, or do you have underscores in it?
No, it was just one word. One big word soup.
You delete it entirely?
As far as I know,
it's not showing up. So
they make it tricky. They make it tricky to delete. So
they all do. We'll talk about that. That'll be fun to talk about.
Mm-hmm. I think social media overall is the worst thing that could have ever happened to civilization.
I agree. It's so bizarre. Everything about it's weird.
Everybody tattling on each other and witch hunting, and don't be friends with this guy because he doesn't believe what we believe, and you're going to be toxic by association if you keep associating with him. And then they pull away and they say, you know what, maybe it's better if we're not friends because you are toxic and I don't want to be toxic. I don't want you to take me down with you, man.
Right, exactly.
It's gross.
What was I going to say? Yeah, you talked about tattling on each other and everything. Are you familiar with the novel or the movie, the Keanu Reeves movie directed by Richard Linklater, the Scanner Darkly?
Yes.
You familiar with the book or the movie or both?
Both.
That's the entire concept. I mean, he wrote that. Philip K. Dick wrote that in the '60s or maybe the '70s, and the entire idea behind it is that these people, these drug addicts, all hang out in a house together, and then when they leave the house, they get in morph suits and they're the cops, and they're all paranoid that the cops are watching them. They're all the cops, and they're all watching each other. And I find that to be the exact world we live in on social media, where everybody has these sock accounts and everybody has these alternate personas. And I've talked to you before in the past about that one dude that blew my mind when he got all drunk one night in the DMs and told me that he owned this other sock account that had been arguing with itself in my comments right around the time Bizarrogate happened. He was arguing with himself in the comments. I mean, how bizarre is that?
That's called is that called, let's see, there are a few terms for that. First is autism. Second second 4D chess, but I wouldn't give it that much credit. And third, gay ops.
Gay ops. Well, you follow all that blood sport stuff, and they do that to each other all the time, don't they?
Oh, yeah, but
like
that's
the whole
fun. That's funny.
The whole point.
Yeah,
that's like the whole point of that stuff, isn't it? Is to like, oh, what you didn't know was, and they pull the mask, like they get them live, they get them on a live screen, and they're like a live stream, and they're like, what you didn't realize was I'm actually so and so, and I have the DMs, and they're like, no. Such a weird world, dude. That I mean, I'm 38 years old, so I grew up in a world where you handled your stuff like there was bullying, and of course there was harassment, and there was all everything that exists in today's world, but on a physical, like you had to be in person with someone to do it, and you handled your business. Like if you got tired of people picking on you and bullying you and stuff, you did something about it. You got into a fight with them. You used your physicality, or if you weren't big enough, you became allies with someone that would intimidate the bully and force them to back down, and then they would generally leave you alone, move on to another target, or in rare circumstances would learn their lesson and just stop picking on people in general.
Mhm. Social media is cancer. And, the more I think about it, fame, success measured and judged solely by fame is also cancer. I don't do when I do my show, I just recently dusted it off again after 6 long months, but I don't do it for monetization. I don't do it for Patreon uh, donations. I just do it for catharsis, for self satisfaction, and I don't ever want to be famous like I used to. I don't want to be well known or gain notoriety, because I've seen how it has gone and systematically poisoned every success story. Every icon that we have ever known has not escaped judgment by this specter.
No, you're right. And I was just talking to a buddy about this last night. It was like I used to have, I don't know what. I mean, I wanted to be a success in that. Being famous is like its own type of thing. Like a lot of people just want to be famous for being famous. They just want people to know who they are. They just want that. They just want accolades. My whole thing was, and I started this a long time ago when I started making movies back in 2000. I made my first movie in 2003. I made my first short film, and I never wanted to be known for me. I wanted to be known for the movies. I wanted to be known for directing these movies. I wanted to. It's kind of like being a soccer mom. Like you don't want fame, but you want to be known as the mom of these kids. You know what I mean? You want your kids to succeed, and I wanted my movies to succeed, and then I was the vehicle for that success. And when I would set up tables at conventions, it was always the Hack Movies table. It wasn't the Kevin Strange table, and it was never about me. It was about the art. And I was talking to my buddy last night. I was like, I don't even think I want that anymore. Like I don't. Social media has so ruined the idea of having eyeballs on you. I actually saw a quote the other day, and I thought it was brilliant. It said, in the social media future, everyone will be scrambling for their 15 minutes of anonymity.
Yep. I actually read an article a few weeks back, or it was actually a few years old, but I just recently discovered it, where he said this guy said that social media wasn't going to be a thing forever. Eventually, we would want our privacy back, and that this happens every few decades when tech and government intrusion and things just get too invasive. We kind of branch off, and that's how you had people open up coffee houses in these backwoods locations, and they went out there to get off the grid and get away, and they opened a coffee house and stayed.
Yeah. I think it's this next generation, Generation Z. They've sort of seen the ills, they've seen the dangers, and they've seen the consequences of this social media overdose that happened to millennials. And I think that they're going to shy away from it. I think that as they grow up and as they get older, they're going to say, you know what, I don't need every meal I have to be in the public eye. I don't need every relationship I have to be judged by social media. I don't need to be constantly have my have my life judged. I've seen. I remember being on Facebook years ago and seeing a woman that I knew personally say that one of her biggest fears in life was motherhood, because she was afraid that she'd be judged on social media for being a bad mother. I was like, man, that is profound.
Jeez.
That is profound, to be afraid to be a mom because you're afraid of what internet moms are going to think about your parenting techniques. It's like, that's nobody's business, man. That's a private matter. Like the way you parent, the way you raise your children, that's like sacred.
There are so many other things to be scared about with the concept of motherhood, and for that to be her top priority, that's very telling as well. I mean, that's sad. What are other people going to think? As opposed to the pain, the adjustment period, the financial, equation. I mean, all the other things that go with motherhood that are so much more concerning. But what are people going to say about me?
Yeah. What are people going to say about me? That's
So what's going on with this dead shit? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm still really new to this program, so you're watching me kind of fuck everything up here a little bit. What's going on with dead shit? Well, I decided this is a panel from my upcoming graphic novel, Dead Shit, the comic book. And Dead Shit, for those that don't know, probably most of the people that may or may not be watching this video, I made films for years called hack movies. I made 7 films, and one of those films was called Dead Shit, and it's a zombie horror comedy film starring these 2 knuckleheads in the middle panel, Nixon and Hogan. Nixon's wearing the black hat, and Hogan's wearing the orange hat, and I personally played the Hogan character, kind of like Kevin Smith plays Silent Bob. I play Hogan to my friend Joshitsuo Montoya's Nixon, and we bumble around and beat up on these zombies and get beat up on by these zombies. And it's just a backyard, no budget, crappy YouTube movie, but it sort of spawned a universe. And I went on to make many films afterwards, some of them that are a lot better than this one. And I continued to write these Nixon and Hogan characters, and they became my most popular characters in the Hack Movies universe. And for years and years, people have begged me to make movies again. And just this past year, the cinematographer for Hack Movies, one of my really close friends, we called him Nick Head in the Hack Movies universe, and he played a character named Don Duepe. He was the arch nemesis of Nixon and Hogan in Dead Shit, and came back and reprised the role several times throughout the Hack Movies universe. He unfortunately died this past year, and it really affected me on a personal level. And it made me feel like the door on Hack Movies was like closed forever, and that I wasn't ever going to be able to make another movie again. And it bothered me in a lot of ways, because I always kept the door open for that. I always kept the door open to make more films. I just never did. When I moved on to Strange House Books, and I went on to be a novelist, it was never. The door was just never closed on making movies. I'm still very close friends with all my actor friends and everyone that did all this wonderful work in the Hack Movies universe. And, we would get together from time to time, have a barbecue or something, and we would, reminisce about old times. And we would talk about, well, what if we got back together and did that again? And I actually had a conversation with Nick maybe 3 months before he died, 3 or 4 months before he died. And, we were both talking like, we're getting older. We're going to be 40 soon. It's going to get harder and harder to actually realize that, to actually make another film if we don't do it soon. And the world is so stupid now with social justice and everything. I can't draw this circle to save my life.
It almost happened last year. Yeah. Didn't it?
What's that?
Weren't you were going to plan a screening and possibly, a return to the Hack Films universe?
Yeah, and it was due to that conversation I had with Nick, where we were like, we're getting older. I cannot draw this. I can't draw these circles, man. I just bought this.
You there.
I just bought this this hardware that I'm using. This Yanova.
Trace. There you go.
I'm trying. It's difficult to talk and draw at the same time. Like, I have to concentrate on these circles.
Get some hair follicles in there.
Yeah. So we were like, let's do it. It can be a really good. Like, there's so much material we can tack social justice with. And I hadn't talked to him in a while. I didn't know where he felt. It's like, I don't know if you're ever curious about this, Jeremy. The people that I was close to years ago, or people I went to high school with, or some friends that I hadn't talked to in years, I always wonder where they fall on the political spectrum, because everything is political now. You're forced to take a side. You're either on the side of the religion of social justice, or you're a literal Nazi. And I've found it interesting throughout the years to find where my old friends, that we're all pushing 40 now, to find out how they're dealing with the social media world and the pressure that liberals put on all of us to bend the knee and swear allegiance to the Church of Social Justice in the public eye.
I have seen people from the school days, from all different walks of life and situations, fall all across the political spectrum. You really can't nail it down.
Yeah, it's hard to predict who's gonna fall where. And I've actually been, when I run into a friend who is fighting the culture war and is standing up for common sense and is standing up for the Constitution of the United States, freedom of speech, freedom of association at this point, right? Aren't we fighting for freedom of association? It's like, you're friends with so-and-so who's friends with so-and-so. That makes you a literal Nazi. It's like you have to disavow your own mother if she's friends with someone who's not a social justice warrior.
How is that not insanity? How can they not see it? And
I don't think it has anything to. I don't think it's that they don't see it. It's that they. Well, there was a guy on Joe Rogan the other day. I forget what his name was, but he was talking about how none of these people like what they're doing. The social justice lynch mobs, they don't enjoy their behavior, and they're always terrified that they're next. And they're always headhunting the Me Too movement, all this stuff, all this headhunting, all this, I found a Nazi. All this stuff is in an attempt to stop themselves from being the next target. They believe that if they bring enough heads to the table, if they chop off enough Nazi heads and present them to the tribe, that the tribe will let them, will leave them alone and not come after them next for whatever wrong think or wrong speak or action that they consider to be, a sin in the Church of Social Justice. These people believe that as long as they're out headhunting and being good members of the church, that the church won't come after them next. And the problem is that's not true. The problem is it doesn't matter how many heads you bring to the table, because context is a thing that social justice warriors lack. It only matters what your newest sin is, right? They don't give a shit. Like, remember Louis C.K. went on TV?
They won't leave him alone.
Remember he went on TV and begged people to vote for Hillary Clinton and called Donald Trump a Nazi? Doesn't help him a bit, does it? He had one of the biggest audiences in the world, and he virtue signaled right for them. Look, guys, I'm one of you. Didn't work for him, did it?
No.
So
what did it prove in the long run? I mean,
nothing. And what this guy on Rogan was saying was they all know that. They're all terrified. They're terrified of being the next one called out, and it's what causes all this depression and all this suicide in the millennial culture. And
so they wear their medications and their disorders like badges, like they're comparing war scars.
Well, because it's a shield. They believe those that oppression stack will shield them from the ire of the Church of Social Justice when and if they commit some kind of a grievous sin.
Some people that I know would not be safe today. For one, Patrice O'Neill. I mean, he had such a keen insight on the relations between white and black, and how we really feel about each other, which is not really. It's just a strange kind of familiarity, where we act differently but with our own as opposed to each other. And he had a keen insight into that only he could provide. And he had an even better running commentary on women. Patrice was a master.
He understood tribalism, and he was able to articulate it in a way that made people not think that they were being lectured on tribalism, but that there was, because he's just saying, well, this is human behavior, isn't it weird? And people were going, that is pretty weird, but he did it in a palatable way. Whereas if you just say like, we're tribalists and this is how people act among their own, this is how white people, but then people will often they'll shut off. Mm-hmm. And they'll get defensive. No, I don't act different. I would never act differently towards a black man. I'm not racist. But he was able to make it palatable in a way that everybody went, yeah, that's kind of how we are. You know what I mean? He was able to present tribalism in a way that took people off guard and didn't make them so defensive about it and try to deny it.
And in this climate, are you familiar with Simon Wiesenthal, the Nazi hunter?
No.
Well, he survived the concentration camp, maybe at Dachau. I can't remember which one. But he survived, and he went on to hunt down these Nazis who escaped prosecution for years and decades, and he would track them down through very sophisticated tactics and an inexhaustible supply of funding. I think that even Simon Wiesenthal would not escape the social justice hordes today. They would find something to pin on him even. Even the Nazi hunter would be a Nazi in today's climate. You cannot win.
No, you can't win. And that's the thing. And again, this guy on Rogan was talking about how it's such a that Generation Z is going to abandon this because they see the folly of the millennials. And it's like, yo, guys, this is a no-win situation. Like you can't have a grievance council that basically has no rules. It's like everybody is a potential offender and nothing you can do will absolve you from those crimes. Here's the thing. Here's something that I've really been interested in lately. I've been following a lot of Christian creators on YouTube, watching them make comic books and whatnot. And one of the things that I've found that's been it's really created an appreciation for religion that I've never had in my life, especially the Christian religion. And it's the concept of forgiveness. And it should be the simplest concept, shouldn't it? The idea that we're all fallible, that as human beings, we are sinners, and that our job as people is to understand each other's flaws and try to find ways to forgive each other and forgive ourselves for our fallible nature. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to sin. We were created in original sin. Yeah, I used to balk at the idea of original sin. You're telling me that from the beginning, I have no way to win. I'm already a sinner. You roped me into your religion. I already have to ask forgiveness before I've ever done anything. That's fucked up. But the profoundness of that statement, that we're all sinners no matter what, no matter how well we try to lead our lives, we're all sinners. The idea there is that no one is, it creates in us the understanding, and we have to come to terms with from the beginning that we're going to make mistakes, that we're not going to be perfect, and that we're not going to be able to live by the letter of the Bible, or even by man's laws all the time. That we are capable of mistakes. That perfection is not something that we're trying to seek. Perfection is something that we live in awe of because Jesus Christ was the only man to live that was perfect. And we don't strive to be him. We strive to understand that we'll never be that ourselves and to learn to forgive each other. Our very nature is flawed, and we have to be ready and willing to forgive each other's sins and our own sins.
Beautifully said. Yeah.
Forgiveness does not exist in social media culture. As they say, the internet is forever, meaning your sins follow you forever, and there is no forgiveness.
You mess up once, you're out.
Think about, and by out, I mean, look at what these people do to each other.
They get people fired. They get them estranged from their own families. If you attended Unite the Right, there was one guy who cut off his son's, some of his money that he was going to leave him in a will. He cut off his inheritance. I mean, they do horrible things, and they encourage and foster this environment where lives are inextricably ruined over stupid shit. Over
forever. Whenever that guy pops up anywhere, whenever Baked Alaska shows up at a grocery store and someone recognizes him, they're going to start their live stream and say, I found him. I found him. I found the guy. It's the guy. Look, it's the guy from the rally. I found him.
And did you see that guy, this ape who went ape shit in a vape store just because the guy had a Trump shirt on? He said, just leave, just leave, just leave.
And again, I find guys like that, when I see someone doing that, I just chuckle to myself and say, what are you hiding, buddy? What are you trying? So you're trying so hard to say, look at me. I'm a good guy. I'm a good guy. Well, what do you have to hide?
What was funny?
What are you overcompensating for, buddy?
What was so funny about that situation in the footage is that this guy's spurging out over the guy having a Trump shirt, and there's a black guy off to the right who's just waiting to be served. The guy's like, I don't have anything against you. I just want good insurance for my kids. And the black guy's shrugging like, whatever. I just want to get some, vape materials and leave.
Yeah. Just trying to smoke, bro. I'm just trying to smoke, bro. We're in a vape shop. Why are we having this conversation?
That guy got fired. Good. If that's how they want to play it, then damn it, kick him out.
Well, and I just had this. I just said this on Twitter earlier, and I want to get your thoughts on this. We were talking about, there was some thread about modern conservatives and how modern conservatives they refuse to budge on their principles, and they want to be the principled group. In the culture war, they want to have the moral high ground by not stooping to all of the. And I've referred to Antifa, but I think that it sort of holds true to liberals or progressives, the progressives that are involved in this social justice culture war. I think this sort of applies to all of them. The idea that, you remember the article I wrote that Antifa ripped off pro wrestling heels.
Yeah.
That sort of applies to all progressives or all social justice warriors, that they're willing to lie, cheat, and steal and do all of the things that the audience absolutely hates the heel wrestler for. He'll break the rules and then try to blame it on the babyface when the referee turns around. He'll bring out the brass knuckles when the referee's back's turned and hit the babyface. The babyface grabs the brass knuckles back to hit him, and the heel runs over and grabs the referee and flips him around. Look, he's got brass knuckles. Disqualify him, ref. Disqualify him. That's the kind of behavior that social justice warriors engage in. And conservatives in the culture war, they do their best to avoid that type of behavior, right? They want to have the moral high ground. We're good people, and we're not going to lie, cheat, and steal our way to success. And that's great in principle, but we've had our asses kicked in the culture war for a decade because we're not willing to fight back. We're not willing to fight dirty. And like you said about the guy at the vape store, he got fired. The idea being, as conservatives, we shouldn't want people to be fired. We shouldn't want people to lose their jobs or be unpersoned or have their credit cards pull their accounts or have their PayPals or
they want it for us, though.
That they want it for us. So what I likened it to earlier on Twitter, we were talking about conservatives and how cucked they are in this culture because they aren't willing to fight dirty. Imagine a nation that is at war, but that nation refuses to use weapons. They refuse to harm their enemy. They say, well, if we use weapons, then we're no better than those, savages on the other side.
They cut off our food supply line. They bombed us. But if we resort to their tactics, we're no better. Yeah.
And so what happens to those cultures? They die. They die. They get wiped out. No one ever knows they existed because their entire history is wiped off the map by the people that were willing to cut off the food supply.
It's happening in Europe right now. Sweden, where else? England is a mess the UK, all co-opted by an even more fanatical social justice. And that clown over in Canada right now, that guy is a fucking embarrassment to manhood.
Justin Trudeau.
Walking around in a dress like, look how virtuous I am.
Is he in a dress now?
What a faggot. I mean,
is he in a dress now? I haven't seen
he embarrassed his country. He did for this one day or something. I don't know.
Oh my God.
He wore some getup that looked like clownish. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember he went to India and he tried to dress up in like traditional Indian garb, and they were like, "What are you doing? This is what your people, your people being the social justice warriors, this is what social justice warriors call cultural appropriation, dork." He's like, and then he gets on TV, he's like, "I'm so sorry I did that." What?
God.
Is there anything you're not sorry for, Justin Trudeau?
Really? I would love to see an end to all the buzzwords. I've kind of tried to get away from all the buzzwords in mocking and in regular conversation, because I feel like they're no longer necessary. I get it that the lexicon needed some updated language in this quote unquote culture war, but it's like I'm just tired of using the words cuck, autistic, and now they're evolving to some other level that I don't quite understand. And it's like you got to keep constantly recycling and upgrading to keep up with the memes and everything. And so I feel like memes have served their purpose, and the left can't meme anyway. And so now I just kind of eschew all the buzzwords. I don't know, just to try to get to another place. Hopefully.
Yeah, you kind of have to get away from it because it's never ending, right? That's the stream of consciousness is infinite. It never ends. There's never a day off. There's never a moment that's not, like you said, the language is evolving every day. There's constant change. There's constantly something to be fighting, outraged about. What about this? What about this person? What about this woman? What about this guy? Look what he said. Look what they said. Look who's fighting. Look who's calling for Trump's impeachment now. Look at this.
Don't they ever get tired?
Well, they swap out. They swap out. There's a near infinite number of them, and that's why as individuals you have to like take breaks. You have to get away from it, get out of it. And one of the things that you and I have done in the past year. You and I both quit Facebook. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was amazing. I used to try to stay and succeeded in staying 10 steps ahead of these clowns like JOB, who would flag me down at every opportunity. And some asshole faggot named Garrett Schulke, who I've never even heard of. I've never even said one word to him, and somehow he's obsessed with me for some reason.
Well, hang on. You hit you stomped on the gas pedal and zoomed away from anybody who isn't familiar with the community you're talking about.
Right. Okay.
They're not going to know who you're, even if they don't care about the names. Explain if you're going to talk about Jeff O'Brien and these guys, you got to explain where it all came from. We've been embroiled in a culture war for years, you and I.
Where did it come from? One day I decided you guys are all full of shit with your virtue signaling on social media and how, you know what, I'm okay with adjusting my white guy language to accommodate this person and these people and these people. And I said, you guys are full of shit. Fuck you. I'm out of here. And I don't even know who some of these people are who hate me. That's what's really funny. I've never said one word to some of these people and they hate me. Fuck them. They don't mean anything to me.
It was the Facebook writing community, though, right? Like people people still don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah. They made me ashamed to be a writer. Strange. That's it's taken me so long to enjoy the act of writing again, and now that I'm not seeking any kind of acclaim or success, it's very personal. I don't show it to anybody. I don't talk about my writing to anybody. I'm almost Salinger-esque now with my writing. I hold it close to my chest and don't share with anybody. It may never be published, but it's mine.
Well, that's how we met, right? We met in the Bizarro writing community on Facebook.
Yeah. And then we met up in Oregon when we tried to infiltrate the ranks of the enemy before we knew they were the enemy.
Yeah, before we knew we were infiltrating anything, we were just trying to go have a good time, and enjoy indie weird fiction, and
we did. But then we got back and saw, a president elected like they are every 4 years. No big deal, and they lost their minds. They lost their collective minds, and they will never put them back together again.
I think the writing was on the wall way before Trump came along.
Really?
It was for me. I mean, they were fighting with me way before 2016. There are a few of them that kind of hung on, tried to hang on with me till the end. But for the most part, I mean, people like that Jessica McHugh chick was like, I can't abide with your MRA talk on Facebook. I'm sorry, I have to block you. I've never done this before.
You're talking about a woman who shaved her head because she saw 11 on Stranger Things and wanted to emulate that. An adult wanting to emulate a child. Hello?
Yeah, yep, an adult person.
Yeah. Oh man,
I didn't even know that because I haven't, again, I checked out on a lot of those people before you did, or they checked out on me. But yeah, once Trump was elected and you and I both came out as supporters, as Trump supporters,
came out.
Well, it is. That's exactly what it is. People like I have friends that work in the public sector who can't publicly express their support of Donald Trump for fear of losing their jobs. We talk about it privately, and publicly they aren't willing to take the risk of publicly supporting Donald Trump or coming out as conservative. You know what? In 1996, 97, when I was in high school, I had gay friends that would come out to me as gay in private because they were afraid of the social repercussions if they did so publicly, and they would talk to me about it privately. Literally, coming out as conservative in 2000, in the late 2000 teens, or coming out as a Trump supporter, is exactly the same as coming out as gay in the 90s. It's the same thing to me. I don't see any difference in it. People are going to scoff.
Way more stigma.
And people scoff and be like, "Oh, you don't know what it's like to be gay." Well, I had very close gay friends in the 90s who were terrified that they were going to be ostracized or fired from their jobs or asked to leave their churches because they were homosexual, and they weren't comfortable ever stating it in public or ever going out with their significant other in public. And that's exactly the world we live in today with conservatives and Trump supporters. They're afraid.
More stigma though with Trump supporters.
Yeah, they're afraid of losing their jobs. They're afraid of getting divorced from their significant others. It's bizarre. And so the writing community really went nuts on us when you and I both came out as Trump supporters, and I did from the beginning. I was done with those guys because remember, Bizarro Gate was before Trump.
Yeah,
was Bizarro Gate? Bizarro Gate was 2015, wasn't it?
It may have been 16. I think it was 16 leading up to the election. I don't know. No, you're right. I think you're right. Yeah. Gosh.
I don't even remember anymore. I know that they lost their shit on us over Bizarro Gate, and I thought that was before Trump, but maybe that all happened at the same time. Did that all happen at the same time?
No, he was already who knows? It's a jumble in my mind. I can't untangle it, but I used to try to stay 10 steps ahead of these people. They would flag me down, and it got to the point where I would call some protester who was making a fool of herself and screaming at the top of her lungs with no, human language. She was just screaming at the top of her lungs and acting like a maniac. And I called her a mutant or something. And I got flagged down for that. Another time I called people like her, like that, a cancer, and I was flagged down. So it didn't take much for these mindless monkeys at Facebook to get on board with the flagging patrol.
Yeah, they harassed you a lot. They never harassed me, and I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why they left me alone, but went so hard after you. And it might have just
I was angry because I let my anger hold the wheel. But the thing is, I would create these, multiple accounts and backups of backup accounts. And so I was never actually locked out of YouTube. I always had a back door to swing back in. And they never got ahead of me that way. There are many ways to do that. But I eventually got tired of it. And now, in a fucked up way, I have to thank them for their obsessive, bordering on homoerotic trolling of me, because it got me off social media. I said, you know what? Why am I extending all this effort when I don't even care about my sphere of influence on social media anymore? Why don't I just remove myself from the equation and focus on things that are way more important, like real life? Where I'm not worried about what someone's doing on social media. If they're saying the right words, you bunch of fucking Tinder-bottomed faggots. And I'm sorry for fucking up your stream, Strange, and your concentration.
It's not monetized. They can't do anything about it.
Okay. But
say faggot as many times as you want.
Faggot, faggot, faggot. They really hate it. You know what? I would not use that word except for the fact that it never fails in getting under their skin. They hate it.
The word. It doesn't mean anything, man. Right. It's anybody who lets themselves be that triggered by a word. Oh, you're a homophobe. No, I'm not. I'm honestly not. I can both use that word and not be a homophobe, and not be afraid of gay people, and not be offended that gay people exist, and not freak out about gay people getting married. I can do all those things because I'm an adult.
Yeah. One thing about those types who virtue signal to Antifa, they are in stalwart support of Antifa. It's really not that. It shouldn't be so much of a surprise that they're in favor of a bunch of vigilantes, which is a loose use of the term. These children who play dress up, they cosplay with facial coverings, masks, and whatnot, and then they strike out of a crowd and then slink back into the crowd and sneak out, so that they can't be apprehended or face prosecution for their violence. They grew up reading comic books, and it poisoned their mind in a way. Not that comic books poison minds, but it poisoned theirs because they're so impressionable. They grew up on comic books in such a feverish way that now they're aping what they saw on the panel, and they think that there's some sort of Batman.
But they're not Batman. They're Hydra. They are villains. They're awful people. They're willing to do anything in order to achieve their goals. And those villains and they're Magneto from the X-Men. He believes that his cause is so just and morally righteous that the ends justify the means, and he's willing to do anything to get there. They're not the heroes. The heroes in those stories are, again, they're the ones that, Batman won't kill. No matter how many people Joker kills, Batman won't kill Joker. Right? Isn't that exactly what we were talking about earlier? Yes. Between conservatives who are trying to take the moral high ground and not become corrupted by the evil of, the social justice warriors, while the social justice warriors are willing to employ any tactics. They believe they're the heroes of the story, but they are in fact the supervillains.
We need more Punishers, though. We'll drop them off a building, drop them out of helicopters.
Did you watch that Punisher show on Netflix?
No, you got your hopes up about it, and you told me about it, and results were conflicting, I guess.
Yeah, I really, really liked the first episode. Like, the pilot episode was like a standalone, like a one-shot Punisher comic that had its own internalized story from beginning to end, and it had the Punisher was wearing his costume and everything, and it was very satisfying, very violent, very gory, and had everything you want out of a Punisher story. He fucking violently killed people. It was very, very satisfying. And then in the second episode, he immediately threw away his Punisher gear and spent the rest of the series wearing a black hoodie and walking around being morose. And the not the main villain, but the series under arc, the series sub arc was about a young white soldier in the military who becomes a serial bomber and is bombing the city, and Punisher has to stop him. And I was so just disappointed that they had to go there. They had to take, they have to attack the young military kid with PTSD and have to make him the subplot villain, and had to bring that type of liberal politics into the Punisher story instead of just having the Punisher go crazy on some supervillain. Have Punisher go crazy on the supervillain and all of his little jabronis. That's all we wanted to see. That's all anybody wanted to see. And then it became like this because Punisher had a really cool origin story in Daredevil season 2, where he gets the Daredevil or the Punisher costume at the end, and then for whatever reason he throws it away and starts it all over again in his own series, and I was very disappointed by that.
Who was the Punisher's? You know how every superhero has his arch nemesis that is key above all others, like Doc Ock and Doctor Doom for Fantastic Four, Doc Ock for Spider-Man. Who was Punisher's arch nemesis? Because Daredevil had Kingpin, right? But who was Punisher's big?
I don't know. Doesn't in what was it called? Punisher Warzone. Doesn't he fight the guy named Jigsaw? Was
that the one that was the biggest?
I don't know. Was that his main villain? I don't even know.
Did he even have one?
I'm not sure. When I was reading Marvel Comics growing up, and again, like you said, there's people in the Bizarro community and in the SJW community that are so fucking obsessed with comic books that they act like they're encyclopedias of comic books, and I'm actually like, I actually don't believe they know that much. Like
they won't, but they hate to talk about their own work. That's what's annoying. You ask them all these questions about their own work because you're fascinated with that at first, and they just get annoyed and don't want to talk about it. Yeah, I know these people, whatever, they wrote these books. But you talk about comic books. Oh, dude, did you see the trailer for Justice League versus Avengers or all this,
Right. Where were we going with that? We were talking about the villain when I was saying was when I was reading Marvel Comics growing up, and I don't have an obsessive like encyclopedia knowledge of every villain and every hero and every subplot that ever happened in Avengers number 502 in 1987 or anything like that. But when Punisher showed up in the comic books I read, like Spider-Man and X-Men and Fantastic Four and Avengers and stuff like that, he just showed up and killed people. He was oftentimes the villain. He was oftentimes being chased down by Captain America and stuff, with Captain America trying to get him to quit killing people.
Really?
Punisher often showed up as like the last line, like nobody can get this job done. Here comes Punisher. He's just going to kill this person, and then the heroes would be like, "No, don't kill him."
The Punisher didn't really. He doesn't fit into the high concept Marvel stuff very well, does he? You can't see Punisher going toe to toe with Galactus or Thanos. He's kind of just for regular criminals, isn't he?
Same thing with Daredevil. That's why they did those Marvel shows. That's why they consider them like the street level heroes. Why they don't get in on the big Marvel universe, because they're more of they're little. And I think Kingpin was often Punisher's. Now that I'm thinking about it, was often Punisher's big villain. All those guys sort of had the same villains.
Okay. All the superheroes live in New York for some reason.
Yeah. Well, those do. You have Metropolis. No, wait a minute. But that's all DC.
Every Marvel hero lives in New York.
Yeah, they live in New York.
I don't know why. There's so many other places that need protecting. The Submariner doesn't, but no, he was in the Fantastic Four for a while, so he did. Anyway.
But they announced Punisher season 2, and they announced that yet again, the villain, Punisher season 2, it's going to be an evil white man.
Imagine my shock.
Yeah, I didn't watch Daredevil season 3. Went social like Daredevil seasons 1 and 2 really avoided the social justice crap, and I really liked those 2 seasons. They did a very good job of presenting Daredevil in a really cool way, and there's some just insane fight sequences. Have you watched any of it, Daredevil?
No.
There is a fight sequence in Daredevil season 2 where Punisher gets him and Punisher fight through most of season 2, and there's a sequence where Punisher has him chained to a rooftop, but he's got the chains duct taped around his hands, and I don't know, somebody shows up, Punisher ends up having to run off, and Daredevil gets himself loose, but the chains are still attached to his hands by the duct tape. So Daredevil goes to he opens the door and he goes to like walk down the stairs to get out of this building, and the building swarms full of bad guys. And Daredevil can't get his weapons out because his hands are duct taped to these chains. And so he ends up walking down the stairwell, down like 10 flights of stairs, chain whipping all the bad guys and like flipping around and using the whips to like fling himself off the stairwell into the stairwell below. And it's a sequence that's maybe 5 minutes long, and it's one of the coolest fight sequences I've ever seen in my life.
That does sound badass. Yeah. What season are they on now?
3. They just put out 3, and from all the reviews that I like, Razor Fist did a review of it, and a few other people did reviews of it. They basically said, don't bother. The social justice warriors got a hold of it. It's all about Matt Murdock being emasculated, and about how badass women are and all this stuff, which is, I have no problem with. That's the thing. There's like the nuance of SJW comics is the SJWs try to make this argument that like guys like us are triggered by strong females or something, that that we can't handle the idea of a woman being in a position of power. But I don't know about you, but I never had a problem with Storm. I never had a problem with Jubilee. Never had a problem with any of the female X-Men. Jean Grey is the strongest mutant in the entire X-Men universe. Never had a problem with her.
Rogue was cool. Yeah.
I loved her. I had the X-Men animated series from the 90s. I had the biggest crush on Rogue. Oh man, her little accent. And they drew her a nice size backside.
Man, that's when they knew how to draw actual human beings. Now they're they're glorified stick figures. It's garbage.
In Rogue's spare time, I think she did a lot of squats.
Psylocke, Mystique. Yeah.
Psylocke was great. Yeah, Mystique was a very, very strong villainous character. And they all had very strong personalities, and they all had their role in the X-Men. None of them felt out of place. None of them felt like they were there to fill some gender quotient. And maybe they were. Maybe the creators literally made those characters to fill, maybe they were all super liberals, and they were internally saying to themselves and saying to the to the comic book editors, we need more women. We need more women in Marvel Comics. But they didn't do it in such a way that made it obvious.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the problem with comic books today, is they make it so obvious that they're agenda driven. They love to make that argument. They've always been agenda driven. It's like, well, you used to be able to tell it in such a way that nobody cared. It's not our fault. It's your fault. We're the same fans. I'm sitting here telling you, I was watching the 1990s, cartoon, but you can't sell that. You can't sell it to me. Like I saw today on Twitter that, and I don't know how true it is. I don't know anything about it, but I saw on Twitter today, they said, X-Men gets its first drag queen mutant. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? That's necessary?
Didn't that already happen though? I don't know.
Who knows? Wasn't Morph kind of Morph?
What does that? How does that factor into saving lives, protecting freedom, and the well-being of citizens? What does that?
Doesn't it in the end?
That's what the hero does in their spare time. What does that have to do with anything?
Right? Isn't it in the end? Doesn't that really? And isn't that indicative of all those liberal communities? Is they have taken to, so they decide they want to be woke. Whoever this comic creator is, I'm going to be woke. I'm going to put a drag queen in the X-Men and show them and own the conservatives. The fact is, all they've done is undermine that character's personality and reduced them to a drag queen.
I'm suspicious of anyone who makes their sexuality first and foremost in their personality.
But the vast majority of people in that community do, and to me it's infantilizing. Like, you're reducing yourself to who you sleep with in your spare time. It's like, what? Okay, that's fine. What else? What else do you do? What kind of books do you read? What kind of, what's your philosophy on life? Like, there's so much more to life than whether you suck a dick or not. I don't care. Do not care. It does not bother me. And it doesn't bother most people. Most people could give a shit less. They live in, and we've talked about this a million times, the social justice warriors live in a world where they're dancing on the graves of the evangelical Christians of the 90s who really did get offended by that stuff. There's nobody out there getting offended by it anymore. You have your little world. You can do anything you want to in it. Nobody cares. And the fact that you're still dancing around going, but I'm gay. But I'm gay. But look how gay I am. It's like, nobody cares, bro. What else? Okay. You're gay. What else? What kind of tacos do you like? Do you golf? You know what I mean? Or is that all you are?
Tacos.
You're just gay. You're just gay 24/7. Is that all you do? You're just a mouth for dicks. That's all you do. So you got to be into something else, man.
Yeah.
But I'm gay. All right. Not impressed. Speaking of not impressive, what do you think of this artwork here, buddy?
I like the girl with the eyeball sticking out.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the movie, Nixon gets a little crush on one of the zombies.
It's been so long.
He ends up having some relations with her. And this is our foreshadowing. This is one of the first shots of her in the comic.
Doesn't a character get it like a dirty diaper facial? And what she talked about it on one of your shows once, an actress did.
Yeah, that's in Nixon and Hogan Smoke Christmas. We have a scene where they do a little poopy action, a little diaper finish, and I've talked about this a million times. If you're familiar with hack movies, this is a common story you've heard many times. But if you're not familiar with hack movies, a lot of the themes in the hack movies would come from real life, would come from the fucked up things my friends did or said. And I worked with this couple, and there was a rumor about this couple that the male in the couple, it was a male and female, the male in the couple loved to put on diapers and poop in them and have the female in the relationship change him.
Oh, for Christ's sake.
And they would do poop play. They would play with the poop sexually while they were doing the diaper changes. And I happened to be in the middle of writing this movie, Nixon and Hogan Smoke Christmas, and I had gotten to the scene where Hogan shows up with a bunch of dope, and Nixon, and he's retarded. I mean, pretty much Hogan is like clinically retarded. Mm-hmm. And so naturally, Nixon goes, where did you get weed from? And it goes into a flashback of Hogan explaining how he got hold of the weed, and he shows up at the weed guy's house, and the door's unlocked. And because he knocks on the door and doesn't get an answer, and he goes inside and he sees this poop play happening. And because I had written the scene up to the point where Hogan opens the door and goes in, and I knew something shocking was going to be happening. Right. But I hadn't written any further about what it was going to be. I just sort of stopped there and was like, okay. And then something weird happens that Hogan's going to be explaining to Nixon. And then at work that night, people were gossiping and talking about this couple and their weird poop fetish. And I was like, well, I know what's happening in the drug dealer's house. And so I went home and I wrote the scene and it happens as follows. Hogan opens the door and he sees the drug dealer and his girlfriend or wife engaging in poop play. it then cuts back to the present, and Nixon goes, "That's sick, man. You just busted up out of there, right? What'd you do? Steal their weed and leave?" And Hogan goes, yeah, that's what I did." But it cuts back to the flashback, and now Hogan is in an adult diaper, laying next to the drug dealer, and they're both playing with their poop, and Hogan's got a handful of poop, and he goes, "But I got it on my hands."
I remember that. Yeah.
and then he smashes himself in the face with the poop. And that was all a tribute to that weirdo couple at my job at the time. So
Wow.
that's where that came from. A lot of the sick and twisted stuff that comes out of my head is actually just a tribute to real life.
Cool. How long have you been trying to? How long have you been? Well, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
How long have you been training yourself to draw for this comic endeavor?
Well, the way this page is going, it looks like I've been drawing for about 5 minutes. It hasn't been long. Like, I used to draw when I was a kid, obviously not very well. When Nick died, he died in like April or May. I really got depressed, and I was just bothering me that I would never be able to make a movie with him again. And I got this idea to write a comic book tribute, because everything in Hack movies is meta. Like the characters in Hack movies all know Hack movies. They're like all fans of Hack movies, and they wear Hack movies T-shirts. They wear shirts of themselves as the characters, and so it's this weird meta universe where not only are the events in the movies happening to the characters, but the characters are fans of the movies that the things happen in. And so I decided to write a meta comic book where we address the fact that Nick died. And in that comic book, which was going to be a sequel to this, Dead Shit 2, Nixon and Hogan resurrect Don Dueppe, because obviously Don Dueppe is dead if Nick's dead. And that's their arch nemesis. And they could never fight him again because Nick's gone. There won't ever be another, Dead Shit movie. There won't ever be another fight between Nixon, Hogan, and Don Dueppe. And so they dig him up and resurrect him and fight him one last time in this sequel to the Dead Shit comic. And that was sort of my tribute to Nick and the entire Hack Movies universe. To let the characters of Hack Movies tell Nick goodbye was, to me, the most fitting way to send off my friend into the next life. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so I wrote it, and I haven't written these Hack Movies characters in 10 years. I had just moved on and started writing novels, and I never felt like these characters fit into a novel universe. I did write one. I wrote the Witch Who Fucked Christmas, which is a Sarsaparilla the Weed Witch is the main villain in Nixon and Hogan Smoke Christmas. And I had her fight Santa Claus again. And it's fine and it's fun, but it felt to me like, a prose version, like a fiction version of the Hack Movies universe is just weird. Like Troma at one point did like a Toxic Avenger, the novel. Nobody cares about the Toxic Avenger novel. They want to see Toxie, smash people's heads like watermelons. Mm-hmm. And then I got the idea. I was like, well, what about a comic book? Because comic books are awesome. Like, you can smash heads in comic books. You can do all this weird, perverted shit that the Hack Movies characters do in the comic book form. And so I started writing this graphic novel tribute to Nick and his character Don Dueppe. And I really fell in love with these characters again. And the writing came so naturally to me. Like, I had never taken a day off from writing them. And I was able to write these Nixon and Hogan jokes again. And I just remembered how much I loved these idiots and how much I loved making their jokes and writing all their perverted nonsense. And I just fell in love with it. And I found a guy, because at the time I was like, well, I hadn't drawn in, I had never considered myself an artist. All the drawing I had done was amateur level at best. And so I tried to reach out to the sort of artist community to find an artist who could draw these characters and draw this comic book for me. And here's the thing about the comic book artist community. The artists are king. the artists are in charge. The artists get to decide everything. The artists make every rule. They get to decide how much they get paid. They get to decide how long the project takes. They get to decide just about everything except for writing the comic book. And I ran into that when I first started Strange House Books back in 2012. I wanted there to be a graphic novel arm. Did I ever tell you that before?
To Strange House?
Yeah.
You probably did, but I forgot.
Yeah,
it would have been
cool.
When
I mean, as ambitious as Strange House Books was, when I first started Strange House Books, my goal was to release Lovecraftian fiction, bizarro fiction, splatterpunk, hardcore, horrorcore fiction, and also do a graphic novel line of all of that fiction. So not only would we have bizarro novels and hardcore horror novels and Lovecraftian novels, but they would all not necessarily like adaptations of those particular books. Like I'm not saying that like a book like Vampire Guts and Nuketown would also have a comic book, but that we would also have a graphic novel line. Strange House Books would also have Strange House Comics or whatever we would have called it. And we were, we were heavily trying to find artists to do the covers for our books. And we would ask those artists, do you also do like graphic novels? Do you also do comic books? And the ones that did would quote us such outrageous prices, and they would want to be paid up front. Like they would want like $4,000 to do like a 140-page graphic novel, $4,000 up front before they would even start a single page. And I was like, this is nuts. Like who could possibly afford $4,000 for a comic that, it's not even, it's an indie comic. There's not even a fan base for these comics and these artists. I'd be like, well, why don't we do like a profit share? Like we'll go 50-50 on the comic. So you do the work, I'll do the writing for free. You do the art for free, and then we'll sell it. And any money we make off of it, we'll split 50-50. And they would all tell me no. They would all tell me, no, I don't work like that. I just want paid up front, $40+ a page. Like, my God, that's insane. How do indie comics even get made? And I came to the realization that the most, like 90% of the indie comics that get made out there, guess who writes those indie comics?
The artist.
The artist writes those indie comics. They control everything. And the idea that a writer comes along and says, hey, man, let's go 50-50. I'll write it. You draw it. They tell you to go fuck yourself because they could just write it themselves. And the tragedy is most indie comic artists aren't good writers. So they might have really cool, really cool, like obviously way better art than me. I'm a, amateur at best, embarrassing myself right now, drawing all this, but
it's better than I could do.
Yeah, well, little practice, you'd be right here with me, doodling away. So I was really, I just let it go back then. I was like, well, obviously this isn't going to work because I'm not going to pay somebody $4,000 to draw a comic book that has no fan base yet. And so Strange House Books just sort of stayed fiction and never became and I never ended up doing the graphic novel line that I intended to do. And so here I was 10 years later. I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to put my feelers back out because by now crowdfunding had become a thing, right? Now Kickstarter and Indiegogo are kind of a big deal. And people now, what they do is they hire an artist that demands $4,000 up front, but they're able to crowdfund it. They can crowdfund that. I'm getting an echo in here.
Here with me?
Yeah.
I don't know why. I haven't done anything different. What about now?
It might be me. I don't know. Yeah, it comes and goes. It's gone now.
Okay.
But now Indiegogo and Kickstarter have sort of opened up this avenue for these writers to say, oh, you need $4,000 up front. Well, let's crowdfund it, and then they do a few pages, and they use that to promote the project, and then they crowdfund the whole thing. They raise their money, and then they're able to pay the artist what they demand. And so I was like, okay, well, in that context, in this world, let's go ahead and try that. So I contacted an artist, and he was cool with all of that stuff, and he got started. But he's got another comic book project that he does and a full-time job, and he just hasn't been able to work on the second comic. And I was frustrated. I was having so much fun with these Hack Movies characters. I was like, because I ended up writing a bunch more scripts. I ended up writing, I think 3 or 4 Hack Movies comic book scripts in total last year. And I was like, what am I going to do with all these? Like, this guy that I hired, I mean, he's working at a pace that we're going to get one comic book done about every 3 years. And my roommate actually said, well, just draw it yourself. I was like, I can't fucking draw. And he's like, I've seen your drawings before. You do okay. And I was like, I actually don't. I don't do very good at all. And he kept pushing me and kept pushing me. And eventually I relented and started. You asked me how long I've been at this. I've sort of been at this for, I'd say I probably started really practicing art in about August of 2017 or 2018. So I've been at it for about however long that is, less than 6 months. Just whittling away at it. I signed up for art classes at the local college. Those actually start Monday, and I'll be able to hopefully get a little better. I don't think this is my best work, but it's my first work. And the way I've always done things, be it movies or writing fiction or drawing or this, whatever it is, I make all my mistakes publicly. I make all my mistakes right in the public eye. And so I decided, well, I'm just going to do a full on dead shit comic book. Like, I'm going to do. I'm just going to write the first movie over again. I'm going to do the graphic novel version of Dead Shit 1. And that's what I did. I rewrote this movie as a comic book, and now I'm in the process of doing this very amateur version of the art. Here we are. What do you think of that?
Nice. For better than I could do, like I said. I mean, I like the red meat of the severed arm there, and kind of makes me hungry. And you got the what do you call it? Onomatopoeia, the crash bang, and what is that? Rip. Is that what? Yeah.
Rip. In the previous page, he's like stuck on the tree, and they're like yanking at his arms. And this page, they finally give and rip off, because this is actually a scene from the movie where they rip off this big tall zombie's arms and then beat him to death with it. And then I decided to, obviously I could embellish in the comic book form. I obviously don't have to worry about a budget. So he actually has really long arms from a what's called the Talisman of Transmutation. And a bunch of the zombies in this issue have these weird, like, mutated things that happen to them because of the Talisman of Transmutation. And so they end up ripping. So now they've got his arms in their hands, but now these arms are like really long. So they're going to use these arms as whips to kill a bunch of zombies with. Because in the movie, they rip his arms off and then beat him to death with them. But in the comic book, they're going to do all kinds of cool stuff with the arms.
It's about the time like a ripping, like fiery guitar solo, like metal guitar would come in, with a blast beat while they're battling the zombies. So are the novels on hold now for a while, or?
Yeah, I haven't been writing traditional fiction since I started writing these comic book scripts, and I don't know how people are going to feel about that. I don't know because what's weird is, like, when I transitioned from movies to books, I lost most of my fan base, and then I had to rebuild a brand new fan base of fiction readers, because the people who enjoyed my movies weren't necessarily readers and didn't really give a fuck about my novels. And then I spent I spent a bunch of years building up a movie fan base, then abandoned them. Then I spent a bunch of years building up a fiction fan base, and now I've abandoned them. And now the question is, who from the fiction fan base and who from the movie fan base are going to follow me into these comic books, if anyone? And then am I going to have to build a whole new audience of comic book people?
Well, Beetle Brain was a good note to close on for the time being, though.
I agree. I kind of, well, and I wrote the She Was Only a Clown, and I wrote a novella series for Jorek the Barbarian. They just haven't been released yet. I kind of dropped them all. Like, I was in the middle of editing the She Was Only a Clown novel, which is my longest novel. It's 60,000 words. When Nick died. Nick died as I was editing that book, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to put this on the back burner, and I'm going to focus on these comic books. That's kind of still where I am. I haven't really left that space for whatever reason.
I don't know what it is. She Was Only a Clown just doesn't grab me the way some of your other titles have. I don't know. It just, I guess it feels too different and maybe the format in which it's presented, I'm not used to as well, where you were providing chapters on the website. I don't know. It just wasn't the same to me. But
yeah, I had never done that before. I had never presented it week to week, and I think you often would go months without reading it and then try to binge it. Just didn't know, because there's big breaks in the narrative where the narrative completely shifts to a different character.
There's a really cool concept that I do like. Well, two concepts actually. One is the fag jar. Enlighten us about that again. What is the fag jar?
Well, where that came from, that was another inside joke between me and one of my friends from the job I was working at the time. When I was writing that novel, we always busted each other's balls a lot, fucked with each other a lot, like dudes do, and like real men do. And one day I was getting into his car, and there was this big pickle jar, like plastic pickle jar in the passenger seat. And I grabbed it and I was like, what the fuck is this? He's like, it's a pickle jar. I was like, what is it, your fag jar? Do you like jerk off? Do you jerk off and save your cum? And he was like, what the fuck are you talking about, fag jars? And we both just got a good laugh of it. And again, it was one of those situations where I went home that night after work and was working on my novel, and the opportunity was there. So I actually wrote that into the book. And I had this character is like the bully of the main character when he was a kid. He invites him over to his house, and it's like this really awkward homoerotic scene where the bully makes him jerk him off, but he doesn't just jerk him off. He jerks him off into a fag jar. He calls it his fag jar, where he stores up his orgasms when guys jerk him off. And I told my friend, I was like, I wrote that into the book, so when you read the book, your fag jar is in there, buddy. And so that's where that came from. I think it's funny.
There was another concept that I did like in it. It just didn't feel like it fit the rest of the framework of the story. It was something about this entity named Tetrographa
something gone. Tetraholographagon, something like that.
Yes, that's it. I thought that was cool.
Well, you say he doesn't fit the narrative of the novel. That's the villain. That's the villain of the whole thing.
Yeah,
he's the one. He's the thing that's the engine that drives the entire concept of the book. And did you ever finish it? Did you ever finish reading it?
I'm afraid not.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole third act of the book, the whole like last 20,000 words of the book, is them fighting Tetraholographagon. Inside its own mind. The clown girl and the main character. What is his name? Elwood.
Yeah, Elwood.
And Elwood and the clown girl, or Elway. It's Elway. No, Elwood. I don't know. What is the guy's name from Blues Brothers? Is it Elwood?
Gosh, I don't know.
That's where I got it from. Anyway, yeah, the whole last act of the book is them fighting Tetraholographagon inside of its own mind.
What all is going on in Comicsgate? Because I haven't.
I don't know. I don't really follow it as closely as I did a few months ago because I kind of got tired of it. It came off as shtickish to me after a while, where these guys would purposefully pick fights with comic book pros on Twitter, and then when the comic book pros would inevitably respond, they would then make videos and be like, "Can you believe what these unprofessional comic book pros said to us?" And they were like monetizing these videos, and they pretty much turned into your blood sports, where they would go on the live stream at night, and then they would just drag these comic book pros, and they would bring up the tweets, and they were just constantly going. It became like a grievance show, where they would go on Comicsgate Live and just complain about what I considered like a manufactured problem. It's like Comicsgate started as a consumer revolt against SJWs and mainstream comics, and the idea that somebody as big as like Ethan Van Sciver would leave mainstream comics and start his own crowdfunding indie comic was huge. It was huge that these bigger names started to break off from mainstream comics in order to escape SJW progressive nonsense, like we talked about earlier. And that's really that's what I jumped on board for. I was really into it. I backed a lot of books on Indiegogo in support of that. And it's not like I'm like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Like I still love, I'm still looking forward to, I've only got one of the books I backed. The rest of them, like a lot of the books were, remember what I described earlier, where they would raise the funds to pay the artist. The artist won't go to work until you've paid them. So a lot of these Comicsgate books that I backed in the summer of 2018, they haven't been finished yet, which is not to say that they should be done by now, because it takes a while. And most of them have like due dates of like March, April, May of 2019. So it's not like they're late. Most of them aren't late. They just haven't been finished yet. And that's fine, because a lot of them, like Donald DeLay and his book, Brutus the Badass, and Doug TenNaples' Bigfoot Bill, they jump on YouTube and do what I'm doing right here, except way better, where they actually draw the comic book live. So you can actually, and I've really enjoyed these last few months actually watching these comic books that I backed be created from scratch right here on YouTube, and it's been really fun to watch that. And so, but like I said, it ended up getting to the point where like the bigger shows, like Ethan Van Sciver's show, and then your boy Zach, all he really does is get on YouTube. It used to be Diversity in Comics. He changed his name. I don't even know what it is now, but changed the name of the channel. But all he really does is complain about comic books. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, instead of complaining about comic books, instead of all this grievance airing on these live streams, how about we knuckle down and make our books? Let's make our books. Let's make that the focus. Like, why can't the focus of Comicsgate be making these great books instead of, can you believe what so-and-so said today? Like, yes.
How did his comic pan out that Mark Waid tried to kill?
It still hasn't been finished.
Mark Waid may have broken some federal laws.
There's a lawsuit over Mark Waid getting, what were they called? Anarctic Press. Getting them to drop Jawbreakers, but that hasn't been resolved yet. But Jawbreakers is still due, and it's pretty late. And I didn't back that book, so I'm not really that worried about it. But Ethan Van Sciver's Cyberfrog is late too. And the big complaint I have about Ethan is he can spend 8 hours a day grievance streaming on YouTube to make super chat money and monetizing all of his grievance videos, but he can't get the book done on time. It was due in November. And he said multiple times, like, I didn't realize how big of an undertaking this was going to be. It's going to be way later than that. It's probably going to be March before it's done. And that's fine. Like, people don't care if your book's a little bit late. That's not a deal breaker for most people. But when you publicly, like, spend your time on the internet, like publicly streaming and not working on your comic, then your customers are going to get a little perturbed by that, in my opinion. Like, if you, like, put it this way. If I lived down the street from an auto mechanic and I drove my car over to him and asked him to do some work on my car, and he said it'll be done Friday, and I said cool, and I gave him half the money for it or all the money for it, and then I went home and I see him down at the basketball court at the park by our house Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday playing basketball for 8 hours. And I go down there on Saturday and go, hey, is my car done? He goes, bro, this job's a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. You know, I'm going to need some more time. And I go, well, that's fine. I mean, that happens. But I've been watching you play basketball 8 hours a day, every day. And he's going like, don't worry about me playing basketball, bro. Like, your car's going to get done. Why are you watching me play basketball? Well, because you're out there playing basketball in clear view of my window. Like, you clearly spend more time playing basketball than you do working on my car. And he's going, well, bro, like, that's kind of creepy that you're like watching me play basketball. That to me, that's an analogy that that explains why people are annoyed with Cyberfrog being late. It's not that a comic book might take longer than you think it will. That's fine. But when you spend all your time doing something else publicly and people can see you doing it, that's annoying. And so that's my problem with the big books, is those guys spend more time making money on YouTube than they do working on the books.
You know what else Ethan Van Sciver is more worried about than Cyberfrog? Some random fans Discord. That's the absurdity.
Yeah, what a lot of those bigger guys ended up doing was they ended up like freaking out and I disavow, and and that's the normal. And that's another frustrating part about Comicsgate is the SJWs have one. They only have one battle tactic. They try to separate you from the herd and shame you and get the rest of the herd to disavow you, because whatever grievance they can like raise about you, they try to hang it on all of your community. Does the community disavow this individual and his heinous actions?
I disavow nothing. I've had alt-right people on my show, and I stand by it, and fuck those people. I don't live by their rules.
Right, exactly. And that's what a lot of us that support Comicsgate said to them. You don't understand. We've been in this culture war a lot longer than you. We know this tactic. All you have to do is say, fuck you, I disavow nothing, go fuck yourself, and they will go away. And instead, they like fell right into the trap. Ethan and a few of the other big guys, they fell right into the trap of disavowing, and they are. I don't know if you realize this or not, but Ethan had hired the creator of Cerebus to write the second graphic novel, Volume 2 of Cyberfrog.
No, I didn't know that.
And they ended up finding, the SJWs dug up some of this guy's past and ended up finding he had like been friendly with this teenage girl for years on the convention circuit. And then they ended up hooking up once she was of age, and they got him to admit this and then got Ethan to disavow him and kick him off his comic book. This is like a week old. This information is like a week old. So the creator of Cerebus, which is one of the most celebrated comic books of all time, like one of the best indie comics of all time, that guy isn't even allowed to work on Cyberfrog because of the disavow.
You know, I just see this statement that The Rock released about the snowflakes of the world.
Isn't that great?
Did you see it?
Yeah. I saw it today, and you know what it made me think? It made me think that maybe we're finally on the other. Like if somebody like The Rock feels comfortable,
Kobe Bryant, right?
Yeah, if they feel comfortable on the other side of this, being like, "Hey, why don't you guys calm down?"
I'm sorry, not Kobe, Kanye West.
Yeah, Kanye and The Rock. If guys like this are comfortable being like, you know what, maybe you guys should calm down, and maybe everything isn't worth getting so upset about. I think that puts us like on the other side of the bubble, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Like the bubble that like started building up with like in 2012 and with the Trayvon Martin thing, and it's this outrage culture and this call out culture. It bubbled up. If really huge influencers like The Rock and Kanye West are willing to, and Louis C.K. came out the other day doing trans jokes and stuff, and was making jokes about the Parkland shooting survivors. Like if those guys if we're on the other side of that, doesn't it feel like we're on the other side of the bubble? If guys like that are comfortable being like, yeah, why don't you calm down?
Good for Rock, yeah. And I think that people are going to eventually wash their hands of this. It's just out of control. And when everyone is in danger of falling under this black cloud, I mean, people don't want to live in fear of being fired, of being estranged from their families, of losing their relationships, their reputations. You know, you should fight for your reputation with all you have. And I see all these fucking pussies in Hollywood just surrendering, you know, waving the flag of surrender and saying, you know, yeah, you're right. All those things are true. I'm horrible. I'm deplorable. I'm despicable. I'm patriarchy. Just letting people mow them over in hopes that they'll show mercy.
Yeah, as though they're going to be like, oh, okay, no harm, no foul, but they don't. They never do, and they never will. As soon as you say you're sorry once, that's just blood in the water.
And people don't realize that. That's why I admire that Tucker Carlson stuck by his guns, and not only Tucker Carlson, but Fox News said that they were not going to allow themselves to be bullied or Tucker to be bullied by these people who tried to get striped down advertisers, to the show. So
yeah, that's good. That's good. Like I said, maybe we're heading in the right direction finally after all this time.
have you noticed how compromised corporations are? How they will swing with the whatever way direction the wind blows now? Yeah, just don't hurt us, okay? Just don't hurt our reputations.
Well, it's funny that
say.
It's funny that all these liberals that hate, they hate corporate America and they hate rich people and they hate that these corporations like have tax shelters and don't pay their share taxes and all this stuff. As soon as that corporation virtue signals to them once, like Ben and Jerry's or any of these corporate entities, they suddenly, oh, look, they're woke. They're my favorite brand. I'm going to go out and buy all the Ben and Jerry's I can. It's like the company hasn't changed at all. They just advertise to you, you dork. They did one, really all it takes to win you over is one advertising campaign. But have you noticed that every single company is now in the business of creating charities, either creating charities or virtue signaling to charities? It's like every single corporation's whole gimmick for selling now or for advertising now is to be woke and be in the business of giving to the less fortunate. It's like, well, you can pay your taxes.
Here's the thing.
That might be a good start.
Here's the thing. Stephanie McMahon came out several years ago before WWE went all, hey, look at all the sick kids we help, before they got onto that campaign. And Stephanie McMahon openly said that philanthropy is the way that businesses are going to get ahead in the future. And she was not shy about this. She was proud and openly supportive of how this, basically virtue signaling was how they were going to get ahead. She was quite open and braggadocious about it, but I don't feel it's going to be sincere with all these people. Of course it's not.
Yeah, before we sound like monsters, you're like, before they started helping sick kids, it's not that they're helping sick kids is a problem.
Look what we did.
Obviously, sick kids need help, but what do they actually do? Because if you actually drill down into most of these charities, 2, 5, 10% of the money raised actually goes to the sick kids or to the animals in cages or to whatever the disabled veterans.
They're gimmicks.
Yeah. One of the things, Bill Burr, the comedian Bill Burr, he goes off about the NFL and their I don't know if you watch football, but the NFL endlessly virtue signals to breast cancer charities, and they'll like have all the football players wear pink and stuff.
Yeah, that's
in solidarity with. Well, the charity that they give to, it's like 1% of the proceeds go to breast cancer research. All they're doing is, so literally all this virtue signaling and quote unquote philanthropy is paying CEO salaries with your money, with your tax dollar. It's all phony.
That's why
that's all it takes. That's all it takes to win.
Well, that's why they say every little bit counts, because it's just a little bit that's going to them. Jesus. Tax gimmick. Yeah. That's why I don't give to charities anymore. I mean, how many years has that breast cancer thing been going, and they still haven't made any progress because the pharmaceutical and the medical industries, they all feed off of each other. They like things the way they are.
Yeah, exactly. So no matter how corporations, virtue signal about it, it's not fixing the problem. It's not finding cures. How much money has been raised for breast cancer, research, and it's still killing women every day.
Yeah, I would not wear a pink shirt for an organization, whether it's good or not. I just wouldn't. I mean,
I wouldn't wear a pink shirt, period. Have you ever seen a fat guy in a pink shirt? That's offensive. That's if you're going to be offended by anything, be offended by a fat guy in a pink shirt.
So
what else is going on, buddy?
I've kind of developed somewhat of a steady ability in the kitchen, you know.
Yeah, we talked about that on the phone a little while ago. What's your favorite dish to cook these days?
Salmon, steak.
God,
Made some lobster.
salmon.
Yeah, I made some lobster for the first time the other day.
Yeah, listen to you, moneybags. Oh, I like my lobster and steak and shrimp. Oh, okay, we're going there.
Yeah.
What, you got a charity? You got a charity people that donated to money?
Yeah, it's the former writer turned podcaster fund.
Yeah,
but it's not through Patreon.
We
But
can talk about that a little bit too once we're done talking about food.
yeah, I just wanted to throw out there real fast because I am proud of this. That I cooked a pork chop the other day and I made my own seasoning with onion powder, salt, pepper, and paprika. And I didn't think it was going to work, but it ended up kind of tasting like brown sugar. I was proud of it. It made that pork chop just glisten. Man, just thinking about it now, you know, I think
That's awesome.
trauma, like makes you want to eat more. I think, and so that's. But yeah, let's talk about Patreon. What did we want to say about Patreon?
Well, everybody's leaving.
They're protesting the social justice madness that took over there, right?
Yeah, they've got some new diversity, czar who's like decided like the first head that needed to be taken for her new position, the first sacrifice needed to be Sargon of Akkad, as though he doesn't have hundreds of thousands of people that are just rabidly going to support him no matter what happens. And Patreon decides they're going to kick him off because he had the audacity to use the word nigger on a podcast or on a YouTube stream, completely unrelated to Patreon. And I mean, they've just gone. Of course, they've doubled, tripled, quadrupled down on this instead of just being like our bad, Sargon's back. Of course, they couldn't be. It couldn't be that simple. It couldn't be that easy. Of course, they have to.
When Sargon was reached for comment, he offered this: "You just acting like a nigga, mate."
Yeah, of course they have to make it. They have to make it this big deal, and so tons and tons of people have bailed on Patreon. Some creators are claiming that I think Dave Rubin said he had lost half of his Patreon support after the Sargon debacle, and now. And I'm not the biggest fan these days of the quote unquote intellectual dark web. I think they're kind of fishy after coming out and saying that Brett Kavanaugh should resign from the Supreme Court. I think that's a little
Peterson
fishy.
said that.
Yeah, Peterson said that, and the rest of the quote unquote intellectual dark web all agreed with him. They like the Weinstein brothers. They said, "Oh yeah, that's a good idea. He should accept the nomination and then immediately resign in solidarity with the people because it's such an outrage."
Wait. Hold on. Harvey Weinstein said that
no. The Weinstein brothers that Dave Rubin and and Jordan Peterson are friends with. What are their names?
Yeah, I don't know.
There was the guy up at
Evergreen.
Up at Evergreen College.
Okay, I know Brett Weinstein, and I don't know the other one, but yeah.
And then he's got a brother.
Boy, those guys must be scared or something. They want to gain some leverage, or they're scared.
Something, but anyway, I've been kind of suspicious of them ever since they came out and said they're so all about free speech and all this stuff, but then a conservative justice gets absolutely drugged through the ringer, and their response to that is no, he didn't do anything wrong, but he should definitely give up the job he was fighting for. Really? Because you guys didn't want to give up your jobs?
Yeah,
because you didn't ask.
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, they didn't ask Jordan Peterson to give up his job when he was attacked. We're talking about this. We're talking about the Supreme Court of the United States, man.
Yeah.
This is the changes that are going to happen in the Supreme Court because of Trump's nominations are going to change the course of American history for decades to come. This is the most important thing. I don't know if you're aware of this, but these Supreme Court nominations are going to be the most important part of Trump's legacy.
Really?
Is the fact that he's sat 2 conservative justices, and then Ginsburg hasn't been to court in all week. And they finally released a statement. They finally released a statement saying, well, we really don't know when she's going to come back. We don't have any. So there's rumors going on now that she's infirmed. She can't come back. She's never going to be well enough to attend court again. She's going to have to retire.
We can only hope that she's not well enough to.
And if that ends up being the case, and Trump ends up being able to seat a 3rd conservative justice, I mean that's almost unprecedented, isn't it?
Yeah,
if he ends up with a 3rd in his first term.
You know that they already have a URL set up for whoever the next one is, right?
Yeah, but it's some chick this time. So how hard are they really going to be willing to go against a woman when their whole, the future is female narrative is at stake?
Well, I don't know. Sarah Palin, she got a bad rap, didn't she?
Oh yeah, they never leave her alone.
They eviscerated her. Did you not find a new level of respect and admiration for Lindsey Graham when he lit into them in that room? I mean,
yeah. I really don't trust any of the lifelong Republicans either. A lot of them are neocons and warmongers, and they don't really have the nation's best interest in mind. But yes, he showed rare solidarity with Trump in that regard.
He said, "You people are just trying to bide time until 2020." I'll tell you what, I would vote for Lindsey Graham if he showed that kind of candor on the campaign trail. But God, I wish Trey Gowdy would run, because that man knows how to control a room. Seriously. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That guy would fucking own. But he won't.
Somebody's going to have to after, is it going to be Don Jr.? Are we going to have a legacy of Trumps? I don't know who can fill these shoes of Donald Trump. I've been thinking about that since the night of the election. I was like, well, this is cool. And this will be cool for 8 years, but what the fuck happens when who replaces this guy?
Do you really think that he's going to? Do you really think he has a chance for 2020 in light of this shutdown thing? We don't know how it's going to turn out. Who will cave first, or if it goes on indefinitely? We don't know how it's going to turn out. But do you really see it not affecting?
That.
Okay.
You say that, but he was at the border last night just tearing into the Democrats. He was literally the government shut down. Nancy Pelosi's hanging out in Hawaii on vacation, and Trump is literally at the border walking around talking to border agents, and just it's story after story after story from agent after agent after agent talking about how much the wall is needed. I mean, Trump is just out there destroying this narrative.
Really?
Yeah, that's where he was last night. He was at the border. It's Donald Trump, man. He wouldn't have started this fight if he wasn't going to see it through.
You got to respect that leader. I mean, really, you've got to respect him as a leader, because he's no compromise. Maybe he should be more compromising, but.
Well, but no, here's the thing. He keeps asking for compromise. He keeps asking the Democrats to come and talk to him and figure something out. They won't do it. It's the Democrats that are not compromising. So he just keeps going, all right, well, the longer it takes, the more extreme this is going to get. We'll have crying mothers on here talking about, children that were killed by illegal immigrants every night until you guys figure out a worthy compromise.
They talk about those kids who died. What were their parents doing with them at the border in nothing but underwear to begin with?
Oh yeah, that's a bad argument, because they literally walked their kids there and then went, how could you let them die? It's like, you walked them there, dude. How could you use your kid as a political pawn and let them die?
Yeah.
You're the parents. It's not the government's job to keep your kid alive. It's your job.
And get this, that little boy, he was going to be seen by a doctor again for a medical, for another physical, but the father refused further medical treatment.
That's insane. Can you imagine? I can't imagine being a parent and using my child like that for politics.
The
I mean,
father refused further medical treatment.
doesn't that reek of payoff? Doesn't that reek of someone saying, we'll give you $1 million if you don't take your kid back in there?
Yeah.
A father wouldn't just do that, would he? Could a father really just do that without there being some incentive for him?
Good God. Yeah. I'll tell you what, they've tried to break through as soon as we stop kowtowing to their, to letting them in and providing water on the border in jugs and everything. Notice how fast they turn to trying to just flat out invade it twice now. Yeah. They've tried to bust through. That is hostile. That is hostility. And if someone tries to break into my house, I'm not going to let them stay. I'm not going to invite them in,
Right.
I'm going to do what I must to extricate them however I must.
Exactly.
I don't care about these people. They need to fix their problems in their own fucking countries.
Right. 100%.
You know what? People talk about first world problems. You know what else is a first world problem? Taking care of third world problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck. Exactly. Fuck you people. Solve your own problems in Central America.
Yep.
Overthrow your leaders. Bring the great proletariat revolution ahead, to bear. But don't ask us for further funding.
Agreed.
Trump needs to pull federal aid out of some of these tropical climates like El Salvador and Honduras, who are culpable in this caravan situation.
I agree 100%.
I don't agree with him pulling federal aid from ravaged places like California right now, though. It's hard to read that as anything but, malignant.
Well, but the leadership should be looking out for their people, and if the only threat the leadership is willing to hear is we'll take your money away, then maybe they'll listen and compromise. Then if you have to do it, you have to do it. Mm-hmm. If that's the only thing that's going to get them to listen, then that's the only thing that's going to get them to listen. Mm-hmm. I mean, I agree being compassionate towards you. I mean, California, as shitty as it is our state, and it's our responsibility to take care of them. But I'm not big on the federal government one way or the other. I think people shouldn't rely on the federal government for much of anything.
See, you say that, but I think that it's more crucial to our infrastructure than we realize. And we're going to see that more as the shutdown drags on. We may be affected in ways that we had never imagined because we don't realize how connected things really are.
It's by design. You make yourself needed. It's not like you turn it off and go, see, now that it's not needed. Let's not, why do we have a federal government at all? No, they've made sure that they're needed. They've made sure that they are, they've wormed their way into, they're just eroding states' rights and personal rights to the point that if you shut off the government, then you've got a lot of holes that need to be filled. But it's always been my opinion that those holes can be filled on a personal level, community level, and on a state level. If you start pushing me, I don't even really like state government. I think
what are you, an anarchist?
Not an anarchist. Just I believe that like small communities, townships can take care of themselves. The churches, it was always the church's role in small communities to take care of the less privileged. What happened to that? We don't need a nanny state. We have our churches that can handle those less fortunate than us, that need warm blankets at night. We can donate to our churches and know that our churches are going to use that funding in an appropriate way. We can't donate to the federal government. They take our tax money by force. They want our tax money, and if we don't give it to them, they come to our house with guns, and then they allocate those funds however they want to. How do I know that those homeless people are being taken care of the way they should be? Now, I don't get to say what money goes to a shelter or what money goes to a private jet for a politician.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say I'm an anarchist, but I definitely don't respect federal. I don't respect federal taxes at all.
And rightly so. You ever notice how these big time tax evaders who are salt of the earth, middle class people good folks, they always end up in a Waco or Ruby Ridge type situation.
Yeah.
Whereas others can store theirs in tax havens in, Costa Rica or Guatemala, and it's, everything's copacetic. But
did you see that John McAfee says he's going to fight the IRS?
No.
Yeah, he's, you know who John McAfee is, don't you?
Slightly.
He's the weirdo millionaire, got rich off of obviously McAfee web, whatever they call it, firewall
software, yeah,
firewall software,
yeah,
antivirus software. Well, he ran for president in 2016, and he decided he's going to run for president again in 2020. And one of the things that he's running on is abolishing the IRS. And one of the ways he's promoting it is he's not going to pay his taxes. I wrote to him on Twitter and said, John, this is how people die.
Yeah, it is. William Cooper died that way as well.
Old Bill Cooper, man.
Yeah.
Fuck. They fucked him bad. Nobody cares.
Man.
Did his family ever get compensation for that?
I don't know.
They fucking set him up.
He did murder the sheriff, though.
He didn't fire first. Isn't that the whole controversy? They tried to say he fired first. It's
been so long, I don't remember.
Pretty sure the controversy was they initially said that. Well, wasn't it the same thing with Ruby Ridge, where they tried to say that the family fired first?
Yeah.
It was found that they didn't, and didn't the Ruby Ridge family, didn't they end up being awarded a bunch of compensation?
They shot the wife, the mother,
and one of the sons, right?
Yeah, and then in Waco with the Branch Davidians, they say they set the fire, even though there's evidence that suggests that in fact the ATF did, but
pretty clear footage.
Yeah,
pretty clear footage of what happened there. I don't think we can really talk a lot about this or not, although I don't think we can really talk about this a whole lot, or we'll end up getting shot. So maybe we should change the subject.
I think the situation with Breitbart, where even the last guy to see him and the coroner who operated on his dead body both end up dead in short order. I mean, that's very telling, Yeah. But I may have to wrap up here in a minute.
Yeah, I could do this all day. So.
You're doing some good work there.
I don't know about that, but I'm doing some work.
You can only get better.
I hope, maybe I can get worse. I don't know. It's been good talking to you.
Oh yeah, same here. And I'm going to be doing more Quiet Place episodes here in the future. I think. I don't know how steady a basis it'll be, but maybe you can. I know you're very adamant about just appearing on your own show, but maybe there could be a crossover effect at some point.
Sure, as long as you don't mind me sitting here doing this.
Not at all. All right. Well, have a great day, man, and we'll have to do it again sometime.
Cool. It's been a pleasure, and fuck Jeff Burke. Fuck Antifa.
Who?
And have a great day, buddy.
All right. You as well, my friend. Later.
Later.